So, hi everybody. We'll watch Paul first, and then we'll watch Vivek.
Senator Tsongas? Well, it's very clear that if Saddam Hussein is able to violate the UN resolutions to get away with it, there is no new world order, or at least not one we're going to be comfortable with. So the United States and our allies, we have no choice. Those resolutions have to be put in place and enforced, and his nuclear capability has to be taken out. Let me just say one thing about President Bush. He always talks about his experience. He's more experienced than the Democratic candidates. But experience and wisdom are not the same thing. Case in point, what happened was when they went towards Baghdad, Saddam Hussein, who used to be Adolf Hitler, if you recall, all of a sudden became somebody they wanted to keep in power. Why? Because they were more worried about Islamic fundamentalism than they were about Saddam Hussein. So the notion of Iraq split into three parts, a Kurdish state, a Shiite state, and the existing state, was more of a threat to the Bush administration than Saddam Hussein. If that's experience, it may be, but it's not wisdom.
I want to say one thing about the tie to Ukraine, if I may. So foreign policy experience is not the same as foreign policy wisdom. I want everybody at home to note that I was the first person to say we need a reasonable peace deal in Ukraine. Now a lot of the neocons are quietly coming along to that position, with the exceptions of Nikki Haley and Joe Biden, who still support this, what I believe is pointless war in Ukraine. And I think those with foreign policy experience, one thing that Joe Biden and Nikki Haley have in common is that neither of them could even state for you 3 provinces in eastern Ukraine that they want to send our troops to actually fight for. Look at that.
You know, where I come down on this is that experience actually does matter quite a bit. I'm a teacher. I've been teaching for 15 years. And just going off of that, I can say from my experience that the more you do it, the more you start to see things. It's a strange thing. You start to notice things that were always there that you didn't see before because you were new and you're just figuring things out. Like as a beginning teacher, you study a lot of theory, and for example, that you're supposed to do like with group work, you're supposed to make it collaborative. But that's actually a really hard thing to set up, to do a collaborative group activity with the students where they're all interdependent on each other. And it takes time to figure that out. When you do it one year, you try it out, you learn some things about what works, this worked, this didn't work, and then the year ends and you get a chance to reset with a new group of kids. So it's a new year, a new group of kids, you get to try the thing out again, and only this time you have a little bit of an idea of what works and what doesn't work. Well, so then, the second time through, you learn some things, you're like, this is a new group of kids, this worked better with the first group than it did the second group, but it still sort of worked. But maybe I can tweak it a little bit to make it a little better. And, then when you do it the third time, it just keeps getting better and better and better. And a lot of times you're working off a curriculum, and the curriculum doesn't really change all that much. It can if you want to stretch yourself and push yourself. But, if you have like a text or a book or something that, that is, that meets the standards, you go through it, you revisit it the next year, you revisit it the year after that. I mean, you learn more, you get more acquainted with it, you just keep getting better and better and better at it. And, I guess what you'd call that is a seasoned teacher. And I suspect the same thing happens with politics. I think you probably get in there and you're a new congressman congressman or whatever, senator, and you don't really know what's going on, the first couple years. You're just learning, you're just seeing things. But as things go, you're going to pick up on, you're going to start to get the basics down, and it's going to basically allow you to start focusing on some things that are not so obvious, but can kind of make a huge difference when you start to know how to play the game, And it works this way with teaching. It's things are not so obvious, but you pick them up. The more kids you see, you start to see patterns. You start to master some things in the room, like classroom management, so you don't have to focus so much on it. You can start focusing on other things, like questioning, or maybe just how to give praise to the students. And this whole time too, if you're as a teacher, you're going through professional development, so you're learning new ideas all the time, and you're trying those out in the room, and you're learning what works and what doesn't work with these new ideas all the time. You're continuing to try things out, and it starts to put layers into your room, and eventually after about 5 years, what's going on. You've got a really good lesson. And again, like, I suspect this is what goes on here. It's not a bad thing to become a seasoned politician here. Experience is good. Yeah, that's what I was thinking when I was watching this. It's just something that it's the card you have to play when you're the young guy on the stage, and you're going up against someone with more experience. This is how you have to do it. But, I think it's been done better in the past. I think particularly JFK had a much better approach to the whole thing, about his youth and inexperience, in that he gave specific examples of people in history who accomplished great things at a young age. Like Thomas Jefferson wrote the Declaration of Independence when he was 33 years old. And then he went on to say that there's no sure path to the presidency, and that what you're really voting for is judgment, not experience, because you can have a lot of experience but bad judgment. I feel like that argument is it's more, too, it's also kind of what Jordan Peterson talks about when he says, give me original thinking, let me see who you are. Don't give me a cliche like this thing about wisdom and experience, which, by the way, if you look it up, it goes all the way back to Socrates, probably maybe even further than that, talking about, Socrates was big on this because he's a philosopher, he's a thinker, he's all about wisdom. He's trying to say that, yes, you've been practicing law as a prosecutor for several years, but what do you really know about justice? You don't know anything about justice, it turns out. And making people just really mad the whole way he does this, but it's a cliche. That whole thing about wisdom and experience, just a cliche, really. So yeah, I just thought that was interesting. Looking at, I'm something of a political nerd, and I like to watch old debates, and I saw Vivek say that, and remembered that, well, Paul Tsongas said the same thing. the thing about Paul Tsongas, though, that's so interesting to me is that at the time it seemed correct, but it's not. We've actually seen that play out now, and I think ISIS was a lot more cruel and brutal than I didn't know. I don't think anybody really thought it was possible to get more cruel and brutal than Saddam, but it was, and it was a mistake the way the whole thing was handled, and I guess the short thing is there that it was wisdom to not go in and take Saddam out. That was wisdom. It was a good move to stop. We never should have gone in. We should have just stayed out. But only time's going to tell if Vivek's argument about Ukraine plays out the same way, I guess.